Derek Jones.
Here.
Katie Cornman.
Here.
Stephen Cox here. Greg Duffy.
Here.
Lane Jones.
Here. All right, we will move to part 2, presentations, and we'll start with part A, presentation by the Oklahoma Public School Resource Center on possible superintendent search process. So I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to y'all, and wherever you feel most comfortable.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Brent Bushy. I'm the director of the Public School Resource Center.
And I'll say, if you do want to talk, into the mic, I'm sorry, I should have said that. Right, Tommy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry.
Press the mute button there. That's what I have.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Brent Bushy. I'm the director of the Public School Resource Center. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Jason Midkiff is here. He's our director of products and partnerships, and will do most of the presentation today. I just wanted to give a quick overview of the Public School Resource Center, and then I'll hand it off to Jason for all the details on our search service. So we're relatively new. It feels new to me, but coming up on 9 years as an organization, which makes me feel a lot older than I'm sure I appear. But we work with public schools across the state. We currently serve 240 member districts. Majority of those are rural school districts across the state, but we continue to grow our membership. Membership is focused on how can we help schools ultimately improve academic performance. We start with, we have 5 directors for technical service areas in finance, legal, technology, communications, and teaching and learning. And our member schools pay a flat fee, and then they can call for services in all of those areas. We also provide professional development, and really the goal is how can we help sort of remove all of the sort of headaches on a day-to-day basis for school leaders and staff so that they can focus on the students and moving academic performance. So as we evolve as an organization, we're looking at how can we also help other schools, and so relatively new search is our search service, and we're just excited to be able to share on that. So Jason, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. As Brent said, I'm Jason Midkiff. I'm the Director of Products and Partnerships. Before coming to work with Oklahoma Public School Resource Center, I was a superintendent for 7 years. My last stop was at Purcell, and actually went through an OSSBA search to get that position. Feels like a long time ago and doesn't feel like a long time ago, right? So this is a relatively new service for us, like several things. Starting in about 2019-20, we thought we'd start superintendent searches, and we went through a pandemic. I did a couple of searches during that time, moved those to online. But the main thing about our search service is I feel like my job through it is make your job easier. It's going to be the toughest decision, and probably one of the most important that you're going to make as a board to select that next person. We'll assist you with the postings, timeline creation, collecting resumes. We'll handle communication with the candidates and the applicants. There's going to be some that, ultimately only one person is going to get it, and we're going to help with the communication with the one that does, but also those that don't, and setting those things up. We'll help with the interviews, logistics, all those things, press releases, communications, and just anything that's integral. The thing is, my job is not to dictate everything to you, but I feel like my job's to assist you in that process. There's no agenda for us or anything. It doesn't matter who gets it. Our last search I did Oakdale, and Brent mentioned we have 240 members. Person that's got it, not even a member of our school. So it's not about our organization or anything like that. It's about helping you find the right person. Just the nuts and bolts of it, the cost is $4,500. If you want to do in-person community forums, there's an additional cost to do those. I'll come out in person 3 times. If you want me more than that, then a little bit of charge for my time there. But basically, we set the timeline, handle communication with the board, whether that's through the president initially, and just work with you guys on that process. Try to make it as easy as I can. We've run several searches, whether you want someone from Oklahoma or nationwide. We've done 2 searches. We've brought one person from Arizona, another one from New York. So whether you want it to be a national search to find the right person or you want a good Okie, we can assist either way. Are there any questions that you might have of our search process or of me?
I kind of just have a general question because this is my first superintendent search on the board. What would a community forum in this context look like?
So we can do like online surveys and stuff for feedback, but it would be an in-person where the community has the opportunity to come to a location of your choice. And basically, I just facilitate that as far as trying to get feedback from them, capture those. There can be questionnaires that are there. They can have the opportunity to speak if they would like to on the qualities that they would like in the next superintendent, what they're looking for, things that are important to them, what are the values of Piedmont that they want to express. So it would just be allowing an in-person opportunity to capture community feedback. If
But
did-
you all would kind of guide
Yeah,
what
we would
that looks like
facilitate
or
that.
questions
Yeah,
or?
yeah, we would handle the questioning. If a board member wanted to be there, that'd be fine, but we'd handle the questioning and those type of things.
Could we do the same thing with staff members,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
teachers' input and?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Generally, we'll kind of schedule those, a lot of times just a day. So like we'll have a morning session for those people that, are maybe dropping students off, and that's a great time for them to come in. Kind of an after-school session for staff and people, and then do another one in the evening for those that
Okay.
works best. And then we'll also, do an online and capture anything that way as well.
Do you currently have an applicant pool that you would pull from, or?
We would advertise the job in several places, we have some, yes, that
That
have,
are
previously
like on
applied
a-
for jobs, yeah.
Okay.
What would you say your membership was?
About
statewide?
240 schools on the district level.
And what are some of those places that you would advertise a job?
We use LinkedIn, we use all the different job boards in the state. If there's anywhere specific that you guys, that'd be part of that process. If there's anything specific that you guys have used, either, in your professions or places, but all the different educational places. And then we can also, like if there's areas you want to pull from, we can do targeted Facebook ads, things like that.
Is there any charge to applicants?
No.
You have a number, you said, if I understood you right, 2020 is when y'all formed your group, is that correct? Your
For
search
our
group?
organization,
Yes,
yeah, our organization's about 9 years old.
about 9 years old, okay. What's the number of successful placements you've had versus those that you contracted for?
I'm not sure if I completely understand your
Okay.
question. How many searches have we done,
How
or?
many searches have you done and how many resulted in placement?
We have done 8 searches and all of them have,
I'm sorry?
we've done 8 and all of them have placed somebody that they've hired.
8 since in the last 9 years,
No, we've done this service for the last 3 years.
last 3 years.
So I know we had kind of just briefly, in the last meeting, talked about when we were setting up these presentations that we wanted to look at maybe have a search service, but also definitely have a collaborative where we had input. What would that look like with you all? I mean, do we have to tell you what we want, or do you kind of have a preset system? Like we do the advertising, we do the collecting, and then we give the preliminary. I mean, what does that look like if the board wants to be involved somewhat in the process, but utilize you to make it more efficient and gather? I mean,
So-
at what point are we getting involved?
Yeah. So if you guys selected us, there'd be an initial meeting with the board where we'd set through, kind of go through your timeline. We have kind of the way we've done it in the past, I'd say, for lack of a better term, a typical, but then we can be flexible. So We'll capture the resumes, you know, where everybody can see them as they're coming in. You guys can set up, you know, like, if you absolutely want superintendent experience, then we'll, you know, set that up where there's a sheet where you can see that, you know, this applicant meets, you know, some broad qualifications that you guys have set. But in that initial meeting, set up a timeline, some of those initial qualifications, what you're looking for, walk through. The first one kind of sets up how you want to involve, how exactly you want all the communication to be, where you'd want, is there anything specific you'd want it advertised? That would all come out in the initial conversation in setting everything up.
What is your typical timeline?
You know, it's different with different, you know, times of the year and things like that, depending on where they are, but they usually last, you know, a couple months, I would say is kind of typical, when you take from the posting being open to when that's done to hiring somebody. That can move, you know, that would be in the initial conversation is, you know, how aggressive and fast do you want to move? So, you know, ultimately that would be up to your board.
And you guys are open to a hybrid approach where we work together?
Oh, absolutely.
You do any type of personality evaluation testing?
That
of
hasn't,
applicants?
that has not been asked of us in the past, so we haven't done that in the past. If that's something that you guys wanted, like sometimes in the interview process, like you'll want someone to submit essay or something like that, that could be something that you could require of the candidates that they, you know, if you had some type of personality test that you wanted that was available to them online, then that could just be a requirement for you to be a qualified applicant.
On your applicants, once you receive them, do you send them then to the board president, or do you wait till it's closed? Do you have a weeding out process that you go through before you present them to the board?
In the initial, like when we meet, you guys would decide how that you would want the resumes, how that process would work. If you want everything to go through a board president, if that's what your board decided, then that's the way I'd communicate it. If you guys wanted it in some type of shared drive or folder where everybody could see them where they come in, then we would set it up that way, where as they're coming in, you would have access to see who's applied. But that ultimately would be a board decision, and then however you wanted it done, that's the way I'd do it.
But you don't weed them out before they, do you?
Like usually in that initial conversation, we'll talk about things that are kind of those initial weeding out things. Like if you guys determine, yes, they've got to have superintendent experience, or they've got to have that certificate, or they've got to, so if you determine there's some things that you're looking for in a candidate, we'll weed them out that way. But we're not going to weed out the candidates and say, no, that's not someone for you. Now, if we do some type of search or something like that and it pulls something up that, you know, is inappropriate or something like that, I'd share it. But ultimately, you're going to decide whether somebody is a qualified candidate or not.
Okay. Nope.
Appreciate the
Thank you.
opportunity
Thank you so
to be
much.
here.
Appreciate the
Thank you.
thoroughness on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, moving on to item B, presentation by Oklahoma State School Boards Association on possible superintendent search process. So I'll turn the floor over.
It's good to see you. I think this will probably be easier. Make sure everyone can hear. Is that okay?
I turned it off, don't turn it right back on.
How about that?
There you go.
Is that
Yeah,
better?
I think
Okay,
it's in the
great.
packet.
Did they, yes, do you happen to have
You should.
the proposal kind of there? Are you all assembled
Yes.
users?
Got it.
Okay. Awesome, really good. All right, my name is Stephanie Hyder. I'm with the Oklahoma State School Board Association. And I appreciate seeing Jason here today. They've doing some work to get some things started in your group, and that's a good thing. We have, since I have been with OSSBA, I'm starting my 11th year. I have had the pleasure of facilitating over 100 superintendent searches. All the way from, as Jason said, we've had Purcell, El Reno, Newcastle, Deer Creek, Mustang, Yukon, Edmond. Those are kind of some of the ones that are around here for you guys, Norman and Oklahoma City. It's been really nice, particularly like Purcell's actually one, Deer Creek, Newcastle, and Edmond. We have done the searches for them 2 times in our tenure. So it's like early in our tenure, I completed those searches. The board was pleased with that process, and then they hired us again when that person left to facilitate the search the second time. We have about a 90% retention rate with our superintendents across the state, so we're really, really proud of that. We feel like it's important to really get to know you all as a Board of Education and the district itself, so that we can be thinking about what that fit looks like. You know, who's going to be a good fit? Who is really going to understand where you all are as a district, you know, what your vision and what your goals are and where it is that you want to go going forward. The people on our team, just to kind of let you know who is behind my face in the association, we have Sean Heim, who is our executive director, Joe Ciano, who is a former superintendent at Norman Public Schools. We have all 5 of our attorneys, particularly we work really close with Julie Miller, pretty closely. And then we have our marketing and communication teams. Christy Watson, who's actually a graduate of Piedmont, is on that group. And our communication team does a really, really great job of pulling everything together so that we can market and advertise your search in the manner that you want it marketed. So kind of with that, I just wanted to kind of lay that groundwork for you. And then I want to just talk real broadly about the page that you have in front of you. I'm so sorry. That's actually on slide one. That's one of those emergency numbers. Perfect. All right, so when we first start the timeline, we really have to kind of back into it and think about, and I know that's something that you all feel like you're a little bit under the gun with that. When we get to this time of the year, I'm just going to kind of start with that so you can be thinking. When we get to this time of the year, it's, you know, you don't want to say you're in fire drill mode, but we're going to speed things up. I feel like with the searches, because you're not the only district that's in this situation, that you're kind of opening this a little bit later. The last few searches, the last couple that we've put on the books, we actually just opened Perkins Tryon. We just opened Frontier. Those are the 2 that we still have open. And we're going to really crunch that timeline. And I can say really confidently that that's not going to hurt your applicant pool. Right now, that it's not going to hurt your applicant pool because I'm seeing really, really great applicants in those other 2 searches. So I would suggest for you all, and we'll make that decision together when it's time, but I feel like we could get you to that place that you would be able to, we'd be able to get the search open in about a week, by like a week from Friday, I feel like. I would suggest leaving it open just a couple of weeks, see where we are with the applicant pool. We're gonna hit the advertising and the marketing really hard, and then you all could be in a position, if you're pleased with that applicant pool and feel like you have a deep enough quality that you're ready to do a couple of interviews, I feel like you could be ready to be to that place by the 2nd or the 3rd week in June, which I think would be really great to try and get somebody in here before the first part of the year. You know, the thing that you really want to make sure of is if we look at that and try and do that accelerated timeline, is you have to feel comfortable with the people that are there. So it's more important that you get the right person than you get a person. And so we would just really kind of monitor that. And like I said, if you get down to that place where we're ready to close that applicant pool and you just don't feel good about who's there, it doesn't feel like a good fit, not the quality that you're looking for, we'd have a couple of options at that point. One would be to open it, leave it open for a couple more weeks, right, and just see kind of what that's going to look like. And the other alternative would be for you all to say, you know, maybe it's just too close to school. Maybe we just need to push pause have an interim put in place, and then kick the search back off in the fall. So that, when I look at where you all are time-wise, I think you've got a couple of different options. But the main ultimate goal, of course, is that whichever option you choose, when you end that, you have who you want, that it's the person that is going to be the most suitable for you all. So with that kind of out of the way, let me talk just to you a little bit about the process. We work really hard to involve you all and want you to understand, as well as your staff and everyone that's involved in the process, is that our job is to facilitate that. Your job, this is the most important decision you're going to make as a board. I mean, this is the leader, this is the person that's going to work with you and make you better board members, and this is the person that is going to be modeling what you want your district to look like for your administrators as well as your students. So it's absolutely just integral and just super important that you understand, and everyone understands that this is a very, very big decision. And so that's why we really take that position of it needs to be the right person. We would like for you all to focus on setting the criteria for who you're looking for, conducting really, really deep, rigorous interviews, and then making the best selection. You know, those are the things in your wheelhouse, and allows us to just handle the administrative pieces of that. So here's kind of how this would work. You make the decision to hire OSSBA, then we work with Lance, we'd work with you as the board president pretty closely the first few days, as well as someone in your central office that can help us pull the materials together to put the marketing materials together, right? Your logo, your motto, your colors, you know, special things about your district, just those types of things. So we pull those things together, our communication team gets to work, they create you a website, a web page off of our web page. And then through that, we have an online application management system. So the applicants come to this, figure out what's happening in Piedmont. They can look at all the really awesome stuff you have going on. They can click to apply, and it takes them to that online portal. The portal has been really, really successful. We've, actually, that's one of the things I put in when I first came on. This is kind of our second version of what we're doing in regard to what we offer for you all. But it's really a great opportunity, an important part of the process in keeping the confidentiality of applicant names. Oklahoma, I don't know if you know this or not, but Oklahoma is really fortunate here in that you are not required to reveal the name of the person that you hire until the hire meeting. And I will tell you that's very, very important, because a sitting superintendent, it's important for that sitting superintendent that applies to the position at Piedmont for there to be confidentiality around their name, so they don't burn that bridge of the district of where they currently are. So that's going to be a really important part, and having that online portal helps that. So as soon as we open the applications, we provide you all with an individual link to that portal, and so you are going to have an opportunity to look at those applications in real time. So as they come in, you can just look at those things. We will also provide you with a rubric so that you can review and rank those. And those key indicators on that will be the things that we talk about that you all have set as kind of priority items. So the only other people that have access to that portal are our team, right? Sean, Joe, Julie, Christy, Amber, me. So our search team has access to that too on the other end. So what we're really going to want you to do is, as those applications come in, for you to keep reviewing and ranking those, right? You're just reviewing. You're going to see every single one. That's your job as a board member. It may be kind of stinky because you may have applicants that you're going, this person's not even in education. What do they think they need to be here for, right? But they've applied, and you all are the screening process. So you'll see everything. And have an opportunity to weigh in on whether or not you think that person is going to meet your expectations or not meet your expectations. We work directly with the applicants themselves, so if they're missing materials or if they have questions, if someone calls the school and asks for information or calls you and asks for information, you refer them to us. That is really helpful, I think, for the school personnel, because it keeps them out of kind of sometimes a tricky position of people thinking that they may know something more than they should. And so this way, that just removes that burden. So you all have access to the applicant pool, and then, of course, we do as well. And then we help manage that throughout that place. We're also going to provide you with an online survey for your stakeholders. So that would be your internal staff, your support staff, and then, of course, your community members and your parents. And it gives them an opportunity to weigh in on what they think are those qualities and characteristics that are going to be important. We will also provide you with a salary comparable for total compensation, so you know this is what you're paying, and then we're going to have 5 to 6 schools above you, 5 to 6 schools below, so that you have an idea of where you are in the range and if you're paying fair market, basically, and you're being competitive in your wages. When it comes to the interview process, we will really use the information that we collect and learn about you, and then also the information from the survey to really help drive those interview questions. And so those are questions that we'll come up with together so that we can really get down to the heart of the issue. You know, really when you think about interviewing, you're gonna probably spend about 2.5 hours with this person. You know, one round of interviews about an hour, and then a follow-up interview about an hour and a half. So it's important that we are really, really wise with how we use that time, so that we can just really get down to the brass tacks of, does this person fit your profile, and is this person going to be a good fit for your district? We do not sit in on the interviews, but we are on site to help facilitate the process. Again, one of the big pieces is the anonymity of the applicants. And so we want to really set up a situation where you can be interviewing with someone, and then we're holding another candidate, and they're moving through the process and not bumping into each other. And so we'll work really hard to help make that happen and then coordinate all of those details to just make sure that happens. So again, so that you guys are really just thinking about the interview and that process and what those questions are, and not worrying about the details of what's happening with, you know, who's waiting or who might be coming in the door. We will also provide you with a sample contract that our attorneys have written at OSSBA, and I think that's really helpful because it's from a board member perspective, and it's designed to protect you all more as a district, which sometimes from a superintendent perspective, there are some of the key things left out that might, as a district, leave you at risk. So we really kind of help you navigate through that process as well. So big overall picture. I'm ready for questions.
Okay. I understand the need for confidentiality, you know, from a superintendent, potential candidate standpoint. How do you do a background check on that person then without disclosing that? When's that process come in?
Okay, that's a really great question. So we can do this a couple of different ways. Depending on, lots of times, you know, if you have a large candidate pool, you look at, and you get those folks to that, that round one, that is where you're going to really kind of start thinking about, you know, checking those references and doing that sort of thing. We have a, like a generic script, basically, so that when it comes time for you all to make those reference calls, each of you are asking the same big open-ended questions so that you can get the same information without biasing, you know, the process and asking one person one thing and another person something else. And then after that process, when we finish with that first round of interviews and then we move into that second round of interviews, that space in between, we have a service that we outsource to, and they are executive search service due diligence screeners. That's the best way to say that. So that is an additional package fee that you could add on if you wanted to do a really deep due diligence screening on them.
For how much?
It just kind of varies. Like the lowest package I think is $600 or $700, which is, you know, kind of social security check, national sex offender check, you know, kind of those basic things that you think. And then it goes, it's a little bit more expensive up from that because you can look at social media. They look at all their social medias and, you know, do their formula for their flag words or whatever that is. And then the other thing I think is really neat, they'll do a credit check, so you can see kind of where that person is there. And then also like a media check. So anytime that person has been mentioned in the paper, a magazine, they've written something themselves, you are going to get the byline of what that is and kind of the details about that. To answer your question? Okay.
Starts at 600 but goes to what?
I think 15, like 700, I think, 6 or 7 to 14 or 15 per candidate. And that's why we don't want to do it on all of them, right? We want to get you there that first round, get that narrowed down, so you're looking at doing it on 2 or 3.
And you're saying it'd be an easy approach, I guess, if we open this up on Friday, or a week from Friday, get a great list of candidates, we can close it, but if not, we can just keep going till we find the one.
We can, we can put a deadline on it, and then, if we're not that place, then, we'll just kind of keep moving that out.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You mentioned, if it's getting closer to the school year and then appoint an interim soup, how long would that appointment, what do you recommend on that?
I would, so we have a gentleman's agreement with Barlow Education Associates, and they provide the interim superintendents. It's retired superintendents across the state that have performed well and are considered successful in their field. From what I understand, it's a month to month. It's a month to month with them. But oftentimes, you'll go ahead and kind of secure them through June 30, right? Let's secure you for this year through July 1 until we know for sure what's happening, but we know that we can terminate that when we find the person from there.
When we're looking at qualifications for you to put out, for a potential applicant, do you have kind of a cookbook of qualifications for this size of a school and this community? And
No, and here's the reason why, because, sometimes people will say, well, we're not going to hire them if they don't have a doctorate.
Right. That's exactly
Okay.
where I was getting at.
But you know what? I don't have my doctorate yet, but I'm going to have it by May 13th when I graduate. So you see what I'm saying? If you're in that process.
Right.
Then you would hate to miss somebody because you put too strict of restrictions on your pool. So we really like to just leave it open. You will find that the candidates that apply and that are serious, you will be able to tell in their materials that they have done the research on your district. You will be able to tell, and those are going to be your serious candidates that will kind of wean themselves out from that.
So how many should we anticipate going through with kind of zero restrictions?
Going through,
Like the initial.
like how
just
many
each board
applicants?
member reviewing?
Well, you'll review everyone that
Right.
comes in.
Yeah, so how many applicants do you think
Oh,
based on
gosh. Oh,
some of the
gosh.
recent
I-
districts
oh,
that you've
that's-
done?
You can't put me on
Like
the
Deer
spot like
Creek
that.
last year.
No. You can't put me on the spot like that, because it really just varies. I will tell you, what class are you all? Are you 6A?
Getting ready to.
We'll
Yeah.
be 6A.
Okay, I will tell you that you're going to have fewer applicants in an upper 5A, 6A school than we would in a 3 and a 4, because it's a different skill set. It's just going to be somewhat different. So I don't want to get caught on a
even
number.
Broad range, like, I don't know how many
6 to
people-
12.
Okay.
Go with
That's
that, 6 to
helpful.
12.
Yeah.
Somewhere within there. And kind of the same thing, and the reason we really don't like to put numbers on this, in fact, when I finish here, I told Lance, I said, when I finish here, I'm jetting to Perkins, because I'm doing focus group with Perkins this afternoon. And that's one of the things I always get asked, is how many applicants? How many applicants? And it's not about the number. People equate success and good with high numbers, and that's not the case. You need effective superintendents. If that's 3 or 4, that's 3 or 4. I mean, that's better to have those than to have 20 that aren't qualified. Good question. Other questions?
Yes, Derek? Greg?
Nope.
No, it's in the packet. Let me just make sure. Is all the pricing that, like, what's the communication package?
Okay, good. I'm glad you asked that. I was getting ready to say, I think I left that out. So the things that we discussed, that we've already discussed, that's the service fee with the support behind that, that's $8,000. And then down below that line, you see that there's some additional fees. The first one, the communication package, that would be, do you all have a communication director? I think, yes? Okay, so we do that a couple of ways. Basically, it's you can hire our team. Like you can hire Amber, you can hire Christy, you can hire Katie, you can hire our entire team. And they will just handle the communication for the district, right? So internal communication that goes out to your staff saying, you know, we've hired OSSBA, you know, here's the timeline, here's your opportunities to give input, and then one for the general public as well. And then at the end of that process, we switch that so that when you make that hire, whomever is in charge of sending information out, they would be ready to send an internal letter, like as soon as you name that person, to your internal staff, letting them know this is who we've hired, have a quote from Lance, have a quote from the person, and the next day be able to roll that out as well. Now with districts that have communication specialists, we just work really closely with them so that, of course, you have your, you know, your autonomy to do what you want, but if you want some templates or some other ideas, or just, will you take a quick look at this to see if I'm on the right track, we'll help support you with that too. So we just really kind of look at that as a partnership.
On the fees, if we start, you know, 2 weeks from today or whatever, doesn't work out and we have to go back in the fall and do it again, are these fees a one-time fee, or do we have to go through the process
That's a
again?
good question. No, we just would carry it over. I mean, because we will have done all that work initially to get everything set up. It'll just be a matter of, you know, pulling it off of the website for a bit and then getting it put back on.
Is the interview concierge what you were saying already? So that's an add-on item.
So it actually, the way that, it's a little bit confusing. I'm glad you said that. I need to work on that because I get that question a lot. We'll provide you 2 days included in that 8,000. If you interview over, if your interviews take more than that, then we're going to add that fee on. And what we find, and the reason that you do this, you know, if you end up with 6 applicants that you want to interview, I just had a district that is doing that today, actually. And the only time you can interview is in the evenings. That's 3 nights, right? And so, you know, we try and kind of say, all right, do you have the capability to interview during the day? Let's get all these people in here and just kind of get it done and get it knocked out. But again, it's just the flexibility of what's going to work for you all is what we'll do.
Last question.
Sure.
So on the focus groups, could you kind of give me an example of what that would look like?
Yep.
Not specifically for a district, but in one that's maybe utilized that recently?
Where I'm getting ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah. So at 2:30 today, I'll just use this as an example. At 2:30 today in Perkins, I will be meeting with their administrative team. And they actually define who that is, right? Whomever they consider to be that admin team. And we have a conversation. We're going to talk about the strengths of the district. We'll talk about the areas that they feel like they have room to grow. And then really just talk about, you know, what are the qualities and characteristics of the person to meet those requirements, you know, to keep your strengths strong and continue to grow those, and then move the needle on the areas that you need to grow in. So I'll meet with the administrator at 2:30. At 4 o'clock, I'm going to meet with all staff. And then at 5:30, we'll have an open community forum.
And is that, I guess, that would be back in the part of the process where you're doing like the stakeholder survey, so that would be back.
It's separate from that.
In that, it's
It's
separate,
separate, but
but
yes,
during
it's
the
the same
same
thing.
timeline in
Yes.
this process?
Yes.
Because we would be using that information
Yes.
as we're designing like our rating page
Yes.
that you were talking
Yes,
about? Okay.
yes, it'll definitely inform your perspective. And, you know, what we like to do with the data, so after we finish with the focus group, we'll theme and code that, right? So you're going to get back just a narrative of, these are the things your people feel like are your strengths. These are your growth areas. These are the things that they're looking for and I think are important in the next leader. So yeah, so I think you're going to use that information about 3 ways, really. First, you're going to use it as you're reviewing the applications, right? You're not you don't have your board member lens on, you're going to have your stakeholder lens on. The second thing is, we would really use that to drive those interview questions. Because, you know, if we met with 3 different groups and we find 4 big themes that every single group had a concern about, we need to be asking that applicant about that, right? I mean, that's obviously important. And then the third thing is, I'm going to ask you to give it to the person that you hire, right? So they can have the survey data, they can have the summary, the narrative information, so they really kind of have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the district before they even kind of get boots on the ground. And again, I think time-wise, you know, it's one of those things, when do you all get out of school? When is school finished? May what? 18th. May 18th? Okay. So, you know, that's one of those things we just have to really kind of think about what's going to work for your staff. You know, what time-wise, and I know it's just, I don't know that there's an evening open for anybody between now and when school's finished. And so we just would need to be really smart about that, on that that's something that we can do face-to-face. We can do it virtually if we need to, through a WebEx if we need to. We really would just try and work with you all and the people that know what's happening within your district to help make the decision about where we would get basically the most bang for the buck, that we can get as many people's voices as we can, is what we're looking for there.
And in that instance where it's the admin meeting, then the staff meeting, then the public forum, if you're doing it all in one day, is that what you're saying? Is that $1,200 or is that $1,200 plus $500 per
No, that's total.
total? So if
For
you
the
did
day.
those 3 in one day, it'd just be $1,200.
And actually, we can do 4. I mean, 4 in one day is the 1,200. If you,
Okay.
I'm going to prorate Perkins because they just wanted 3 groups, but 4 groups for the 1,200. And a lot of times, what they did, and again, we were on a short timeline, which is what part of why they didn't do that. But a lot of times, that 4th meeting might be like invitation only to maybe your board, if you have a board advisory group, or if you have a group that you work with specifically on bond issues, or if you have, you know, some business leaders in the community that you want to pull together. You could make that a, you know, specialty focus if you chose.
And I guess it's just your team present at those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I wouldn't mind, it's what I told Perkins too, it's like, particularly for the staff, I prefer the board not to be there. Just, again, we're trying to create that environment that they feel like they have some autonomy and build some trust there. And then, of course, you could be at the community if you chose to. Perkins chose not to because they just felt like the same thing. They thought, you know, we just feel like people will be more open and honest if they don't feel like, you know, they're being listened in on. So, but again, it's up to you. Great questions. Anything else?
Well, we appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you for,
Thank you, guys.
appreciate both groups presenting. That's
You bet.
there's a lot of good information in that. And,
Thank you guys for coming.
You bet. Our
it's a
pleasure.
big task in front of us. So if there's no other questions, then we'll move on the agenda to action items. Part A, or 3A, action items, discussion and vote on possible superintendent search process and authorize the execution of any necessary documents. So it's the time we open up the floor for us to discuss the 2 presentations and give our thoughts on that. Somebody want to start? Thank you.
I'm getting ready to go too. Are we safe to go out that door and I'll set off the alarm?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean, it's good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll kick it off. I've got just some opinions. You know, for me, Stephen, starting with the cost, in my opinion, I mean, we're talking, this is a big deal. And not that cost is irrelevant, but I think you know, we're not talking about a significant difference in.
Correct.
So for me, when I look at the cost side of it, I kind of, you know, their add-ons are very similar. So I kind of put cost to the side because it really comes down to some other factors for me. And just personally, for me, being in education, yeah, I really think it's about networking and relationships, and I think both groups are excellent and offer a good service, it sounds like. I personally have a relationship with Dr. Heim and Dr. Ciano and Julie Miller at the OSSBA and Amber Fitzgerald. So I know those people. So I do, you know, I lean that direction just because I'm familiar with them. And with education being such a vast network, well, I say vast, it's becoming a smaller network.
Right.
You know, they're very well connected. And so I do, you know, personally, I lean that direction. I have full faith and confidence that the OPSRC would be a great group. They do have a smaller network of schools. OSSBA does have a larger network of schools, and schools that are more like us,
Right.
peer schools, so.
And the concern there for me is that the number of superintendents they've placed as compared to the OSSBA. It's
9.
over 100 to 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I really like the portal that she talked about, to where we all have access to see who's applied, who's,
The other guy mentioned the portal as well.
did he?
Mhm.
Okay.
I thought he said a shared drive, like
Well,
they were
shared
just gonna
drive.
drop it into a Google,
Yeah.
Right.
Google Drive.
Same thing.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I thought it was important to have more than one group come in and not just, you know, only see one presentation. But I think for how late in the year and how important a decision, you know, that the experience and the streamline of somebody who's done this over and over and over again is gonna be important for us.
Correct.
To be efficient and do our best, you know, as board members.
I liked how she also said it could be rolling. We could find our person in 3 weeks or not. Then we do an interim, keep it open, and then put an emphasis on finding the right person instead of, you know, 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And obviously, we're currently members of OSSBA, and a lot of us have, you know, multiple conversations with the legal team and, you know, are more familiar with some of the team members there, which, again, may make it a little easier when we're working in a shorter timeline.
Just seems like the OSSBA has more experience working with boards to get this to the correct destination of finding the right person for the job.
So if we're discussing the motion, I guess any add-ons that someone making the motion would want, would they need to make those add-ons in the initial motion? Or would that be something that we could?
Yeah, I think basically somewhere along the lines of a motion that would authorize OSSBA to assist, you know, in the process and along with any necessary documents that relate to the search.
Right.
Something along those lines would give us the authority to do that. That would encompass the whole package.
Okay, so we don't have to set a price,
No.
just build our package as we determine what's necessary.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that the flexibility of if we don't have the right person, then we can,
Oh, back up.
we don't have to do it at
Right.
the time. So that's,
So through this process, when they're working with the board on qualifications and things like that, are we holding special meetings and then going into private session? How does that
I think we'll-
functionally work?
I think we'll lean on them for.
Okay, I just didn't know if has anybody been through? No?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. Yeah, I think that's, I definitely, the stakeholder input was a big one for me, because I think that hearing from our staff, hearing from our parents and community members is important. And not with us, you know, not with them feeling like that, like she said, we're looking over their shoulder.
Right.
Right.
And you know, where they can actually speak freely and, you
Yeah.
know.
That stood out.
I think the survey's fine, but I liked that both groups, like, I prefer the in-person. I mean, we've got community stakeholders who would absolutely, I think, show up to an in-person forum
Yeah.
and give their opinion especially, you know, so
Correct.
no matter who we went with, that was a piece, like an add-on that I would definitely want to see put in place, especially the climate of our community. We know how that would be a valued piece to the process.
I agree.
Anybody else want to add anything to the conversation?
No?
If not, then, we're looking for a motion.
Make a motion that we enter the final negotiations and authorize the execution of any necessary documents to enter into a contract with the Oklahoma State School Board Association for the superintendent search process.
I second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Greg, and Sonia, did you get that motion? Okay, we got a motion by Greg and a second by Derek. Can we get a vote?
Derek?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Stephen, yes. Greg?
Yes?
Lane?
Yes. All right. So moving on to action item B, discussion and possible board action to direct board president to review options regarding the hiring of an interim superintendent. And this item came about in discussions with the school attorney regarding moving from here until we, you know, what it looks like moving, until we had this process in place. So basically, Brian's thoughts were that we want to at least, as a board, have the capacity to bring some options to the table that we could look at for and it could be for Monday's meeting, for us to, you know, whether it's to have us look at an interim superintendent from now until the end of this school year, June 30th. Whether it's an interim superintendent option that we have in place between now and the hiring of a new superintendent. And in discussions with him, one of the things that even kind of crossed my mind a little bit was just to get us through June 30th and through July 1st, you know, if we had an interim and then, you know, obviously we may not have somebody in place, but if it looks like this is gonna be an extended process, then we could re-examine the option of an interim superintendent from July 1st until this is completed, whether it was, you know, in August or whether it was in December. Because they'll help, it sounds like they'll help us establish a timeline as well. So, the two presentations today helped clarify a little bit of this from the standpoint of, I feel very comfortable that moving forward, that we're gonna have a good process in place.
Mhm.
And so, I guess the question comes down to, do we as a board need to have any authority to act to bring options to the table for interim superintendent moving forward? And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, we have Monday. I mean, we could, you know, that's something that we could put on the agenda for Monday to talk about, if we want to name an interim superintendent, you know, through July 1, we want to name one, you know, whether it's internal or if we want to go external, bringing in Barlow consultants to help us with that. So that's what this discussion point, so that doesn't necessarily have to be any actions.
It sounded like to me that the OSSBA, she recommended somebody outside from her, she said, what, a list of retired superintendents to do from, interim from, I guess, July 1 on. My deal on that is the odds of us finding a superintendent to start mid-first semester would be slim to none. So it'd probably, if we go that route, we'd probably be looking at a January 1 hiring, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's.
Yeah, very well. I mean, there's a, you know, I definitely don't want to get caught up in saying we have to have somebody by July 1.
Right.
I mean, and if it works out by July 1, then great, but if not, then,
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
it needs to be January 1. And it, just knowing the nature of this business and like Stephanie mentioned, where we sit as a school, our candidate pool just became more limited because of the nature of this job. And so it, you know, it may come across to make more sense to, that it could end up being January 1 before we have somebody in place. I mean, but at least we have that, you know, we've got those options on the.
So if we did an interim between now and the end of the school year on the June 30th, would be in charge of, I mean, I would assume they'd take responsibility of POs and all that are currently
For sure.
not.
Yeah, and I think that's something in this discussion that, you know, obviously, we need to look at having some options in place for Monday to talk about that,
Okay.
whether we want to have an interim finish out the school year, and then work with Barlow and the OSSBA to get an interim in place if needed longer.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of,
I prefer not to be in limbo till the end
For
of
sure.
the school year, so I would prefer that we, you know, move forward on this action and then have some sort of at least secondary discussion on Monday
Right.
about
Yeah.
closing the school year strong and having some, you know.
and we don't have to
direction.
have an action necessarily today, other than to know that, that's just to get, that was there to give us the option of an action if needed.
Can we put an action today, like if we decide to name one today, or does that have to wait till Monday?
Monday.
Okay.
We can't name
So
that,
do we move to direct the board president to
to bring options.
bring options to Monday's meeting?
I think
Mhm.
that's the purpose of this.
Okay.
action.
I'll make a motion that we direct our board president, Lane Jones, regarding hiring an interim superintendent for him to bring some ideas and options to Monday's meeting and have that as an agenda item.
I second.
Sonia, did you get that? Okay, perfect. We got a motion by Katie and a second by Derek. Can we get a vote?
Derek?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Stephen, yes. Greg?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right. That's it. Next, moving on to item 4, adjournment.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, motion
Second.
by Katie, second by Stephen. And the vote?
Derek?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Stephen, yes. Greg?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right, time is 12:57 and we are adjourned.
I mean Lance?
No, thanks.